Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser, who serves as the Barrett Principal Education Conductor and Community Ambassador for the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Aaron. It's great to be here.
So, well, it is so great to have you on the show. You have just done extraordinary work in the field and, of course, are doing amazing work in Toronto with the orchestra, which is one of our amazing creative partners, helped us to co-curate this show. And so, and here on Arts Engines, we're always wanting to make sure we're sharing information from leaders such as yourself that, we have people who are in, orchestral leadership roles, in academic leadership roles across the field. And so we're able to kind of learn the interesting work that's going on in other institutions and around the field. A lot of times we just aren't aware. So you're really doing some amazing work in terms of the education and community engagement work at the Toronto Symphony. So I thought we'd really kind of try and focus on that and delve in a little bit. And first, I thought I would kind of just start overarching, which was kind of just to get your sense of community engagement work, right? When you think about it, how do you view it? How do you view leading those types of efforts? What do you see as kind of the main goals of this type of work for orchestras?
Well, in terms of how I see community engagement work, there are 5 questions that I ask. A while ago, in collaboration with Orchestras Canada, I wrote about and came up with something called the Perfect Fifth of Diversity. And it's really a very small tool to help us begin thinking about how to serve in the community. And it's based on 5 very simple questions. Number 1 is who's playing, who's being played, who's listening, who's deciding. And number 5, maybe the most important one, is how are we treating each other as we're going through all these stages? So I look at our community and I think about who's playing, who's actually on stage, who's being played, who are the composers that we're putting the spotlight on, who's listening. When I look out in the audience and I see people of color, is it only the people of color that I've invited? And last night at our TSO concert, it was great. There were lots of people of color, a wonderfully diverse audience, right? Which it should be for the most diverse, one of the most diverse cities in the world. Who's deciding? What does board representation look like? The leadership, are there different voices at the table of leadership? And when we are collaborating, are we giving our collaborative partners the ability to say no? Or does it just look like, is that pseudo collaboration? Are we actually giving them any power? When I think about our collaboration with Red Sky Performance in Missitim, which was a performance, it's an Indigenous story. And in Canada, we're talking so much about truth and reconciliation right now. And we're learning to talk about it and learning to do this work. How are we handing over power? Who's allowed to say no in our collaborations? What does that look like? Hopefully, our collaborative partners in Red Sky would say, yes, it was a shared power agreement that we were able to have collaborative and creative autonomy within this partnership, right? So who's playing, who's being played, who's listening, who's deciding? And then the 5th most important is, how are we treating each other as we go about this? So that even if I have the right people on stage playing the right music with the right collaborative partners, a year later, when they think about how it was with the TSO, oh yeah, that was great, we had a good experience. Emotionally, did they feel like they were respected? Are we treating each other well as we go through doing all of the right things? So not only doing the right things with our community partners and within the community, not only doing the right things, but doing the right thing in a good way, in the right way. That's sort of a very overarching view of how we approach things at the TSO.
I absolutely love that. And I think there's so many in our audience who are going to kind of really take on to those core 5 things, because I think you really capture so much of everything. It relates to really, I think, it not just, community engagement and education, but literally who an orchestra should be, and taking all of these things into account. I think it's very, very powerful. So when we think specifically about, let's delve into kind of partnerships, right? Because a lot of times, and this goes to, I think, some of your key methods, but or key principles. So now I'm kind of wondering, in terms of some of the actual methods of implementation. I know a lot of orchestras have found, and you can have situations where you look to have a collaboration and one partner is better funded than the other or bigger than the other, right? So you have this kind of power differential, and again with decision making. But then also you have some institutions that are like, well, we'd love to have these diverse community partnerships, but we don't really know how to go about doing it. Are there any kind of implementation steps or methods that you have when you're looking to say, you know, here's a community we want to work with, so here's what I do to actually make that happen and then sustain it?
Right. So in terms of the funding portion of, I can't speak directly to that because that's another part of my team. I do know, you know, there will at times be mismatches in terms of powers that organizations have. And I think at a moment when a really powerful or, you know, amply supplied orchestra is coming to a smaller organization, you just have to be really sensitive and think about what that organization can handle. On the creative side, I think it's really important to have an empathic stance towards the community that you're thinking of working with, and thinking really, really, really intensely about not what can we offer, but what do they need first? What does that community need, and what can we offer out of whatever, you know, riches or largesse, whatever we have? What do they need? So specifically, that requires a posture of listening from the organization. I'm thinking, you know, the YMCA of Greater Toronto and our ongoing collaboration with them. We have this set up as a multi-year partnership, which means that we have room to experiment within it. We have room to evolve. The lines of communication are open. Are the lines of communication open, or is it all just going one way? Is there room? Is there a time frame that allows for evolution, or is it so cookie cutter that we have to achieve these objectives in this time? Is there room for experimentation? Is there room for failure? Is there room for reflection? When we've set up a long-term partnership, like as we have, there will be that room in our partnership with the YMCA to suggest, even, you know, as a couple of weeks ago, can we do this program? Can we try this? Oh, well, we can't, you know, there's room. So there has to be room to evolve and room to learn how the gears can mesh together, because every orchestra and every partnership, it's a big family. We're putting families together and they have their own internal rules. So we have to be able to listen and have time to grow and evolve. Does that answer a little bit?
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
Kind of high level, but that's yeah.
No, definitely. And when you think about this work, and as you've experienced it and been a leader in it in so many ways, is there something as you reflect back that, you know, if I were to look at it, this was one of the biggest challenges? Like when I think about if someone's thinking about building these types of collaborations, doing this type of work, here was one of the biggest challenges that I found, and or whether I was either successful or not as successful as I wanted to be at addressing that challenge.
Right. So this will again be a little bit general, but this is for orchestra land, our big orchestra family. I think the thing that I find the most challenging is the issue of time. Time is either very large or very small, but nothing in between. So when I say very large, we have ensemble, like for example, doing some collaborations in my experience where we want to do something next summer of 2022. And if you have a great, you know, group of musicians that we want to work with, but they might not be thinking that far ahead, right? If it's, you think about of a community group or a small group, you want to highlight these people and say, hey, here's an opportunity. They're not planning that far ahead. But then when the day of the rehearsal comes, we have 2.5 hours of the 25-minute break, and we can't break before, you know how it goes. And they're not used to working like that. They want to try it again. And I've had very difficult rehearsals where I made mistakes working with specifically an Indigenous group where their music needed to flow and breathe. And I was just like, no, we got to go. We got to go. I have this next. Time. We have to be aware that other organizations have different timelines and find a way to marry the two. I'm not saying that we should triple the rehearsal time for everything, or that we suddenly, but flexibility and time in orchestra is one of our largest stumbling blocks institutionally across North America. and introducing some flexibility into the way that we work with time. And I'm not saying that we get rid of our structure. I'm not saying that. I am saying that as we introduce some flexibility, room for evolution within the partnerships and collaborations, we will be more successful. We will be able to bring a wider group of people into the orchestral family.
Wow, love that. Absolutely. So another thing that the Toronto Symphony and with your leadership is doing really well is kind of partnering and engaging in this work with issues relating to health and wellness. And you partner with Cancer Center and Alzheimer's Society. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, both the intent behind the partnerships and then how they actually bear out.
Sure. Like part of the intent is, this question of who's listening. Are the only people that are able to listen to professional symphony orchestra the ones that are able to come down to the hall? Can we take the music to them? Okay, lots of orchestras are doing run-out concerts, smaller concerts for education, but can we go even further with that? Something I think about a lot is that in every concert that an orchestra performs, there's somebody there for whom it is the first concert, somebody there for whom it is their only concert they will ever hear, and somebody for whom it is their last concert. First, last, and only. Every concert, there's somebody there. Every concert is very, very high stakes. So we're thinking about people who've loved orchestral music for their entire lives, have been supporters, and then, they end up having cancer or having dementia or Alzheimer's or something. Can we go to them? We know what the effects of music are on the spirit, on the mind, on the body. Can we take our music to them? Can we engage in these long-term partnerships in this area? And then also, can we prepare our musicians for those interactions? So it's not just a matter of, okay, we're going to send you off to the hospice. Now please go and play Bach air, and then thank you very much, go home. No, we can't do that to our musicians. We have to be supporting them as we're asking them to go out and do these things, right? So that is part of, these are long-term partnerships that we have with Princess Margaret Cancer Center and Alzheimer's Society and others, in the YMCA with others, where we have room to evolve, room to experiment, where we're coming up with things. And musicians, a few musicians have talked to me about, hey, what about this? What about this? We're having discussions, getting musician input, and hopefully feedback. And I hope that 5 years from now, with these partnerships, and when we look back, that the people listening in the concerts, the staff on the other end of the collaboration, our musicians as well, our staff would say, yeah, we did a great thing. The right people were listening, played great music for them. The decision makers were feeling supported, and we treated each other well as we did that. And in the whole landscape, the entire thing, it was done well in a human way. That's really, really important. So that's what I hope we can take forward with these partnerships. We'll see, Aaron. We're going to make some mistakes.
Right.
Yeah. I've gone on, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no, absolutely awesome. Amazing work. And unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to check in with my guests on themselves and their own leadership. So in other words, with all of this amazing work, which is inspirational, there's got to be tough days. There's got to be some challenging times. And in those moments, where do you turn for inspiration, for strength to be able to overcome the challenges that you face in your leadership?
Two places. One is I go back to the music that I fell in love with at the beginning, that I'm still in love with. And that just revitalizes me. I remember why I'm doing this, the power of the music that I fell in love with. And two, other conductors, actually. I found conductors to be a really collegial bunch. We're never in the same city at the same time, but we share the same sorts of conceptual and particular difficulties. So I have a really strong base of conducting colleagues that I can call up and say, hey, this happened, or what do you think about this? So I rely on my colleagues and the music, basically.
Awesome. Including, I think, some colleagues here in Michigan.
Absolutely.
So, well, Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser, you have just been a tremendous guest, and you are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much, Aaron.